It is our final May show for 2026. Hello, hi, and welcome aboard to FFPC Insider Access for May 28th, 2026. My name is Eric Balkman, your host. You can connect with me on the X at ERICBALKMAN. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Extra Rep Show, as well as the Fantasy Football Players Championship and the RotoBaller High Stakes Slowdown. Reminder, speaking of the FFPC, if you want to get involved in the best ball tournament, there is $100,000 extra in the grand prize this year. It was $300K last year. It's $400K this year. Just $125 to enter that. We also have a Superflex best ball tournament. That's just $35 to get in, but you still can win $100,000 grand prize. We have the FFPC Big Gorilla going on as well. $350 to enter that. $1 million grand prize. Multiple of those leagues are filling each and every day. The early Rampage tournament still has about 40 leagues left or so. So you basically are getting two tournaments for the price of one entry fee, a $10,000 grand prize awaits you if they win the early Rampage this year. And of course, the 7 Bananas promo is going on. What is the 7 Bananas promo? Go to myffpc.com and find out how you can win free teams. With that, the Baby Gorilla, $125 to enter. Same exact format as the Big Gorilla with a $100,000 grand prize. We have Dynasty and Empire startups going on. Start at $100, go up to $5,000. So if you want to play fantasy football all year round, you can do that with our Empire Dynasty and our Dynasty startups. We also have chop leagues now. Just avoid being the lowest scoring team in your league on any given week, and you will win the prize there, which could be cash, could be a main event entry, could be a Big Gorilla entry. And speaking of those main event entries, you still have a couple of days left. May 31st at midnight Pacific is your last chance to get into the FFPC main event early bird, which features a $200 discount off your team. Remember, you can always get additional teams at $600 off, and then you're automatically entered into the Pros versus Joes drawing where 42 pros will take on 42 Joes for the right to win 7 2027 FFPC main event teams. Those are $2,200 value, and you could win it for free if you get selected for Pros versus Joes. All those are at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Shout out to Albert and Tom, who are both hanging out on YouTube watching the show tonight. Appreciate you guys. And let's bring in the guest tonight, our guest co-host, who I appreciate. You know him from his work at RotoBaller. You connect with him on the X at RJ the Goodman. Please welcome back onto the show from RotoBaller, Mr. Ryan Goodman. Ryan, good evening and welcome, sir. How are you?
Appreciate it, Eric. Feeling good. Just getting back into the swing of fantasy things here. So yeah, pumped to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I wish I wish we had better news to talk about. Like that's the frustrating thing. I was listening to Chad Parsons talk about this the other day on the Under the Helmet podcast, and he said, any news we get at this time of year, it's usually bad. And we've gotten some bad stuff about Rashee Rice, Bucky, Irving, Josh Jacobs. We'll get to all that tonight. We'll go around the NFL in the first segment. Second segment, we'll get to some news from OTAs, some injury updates, some good, some kind of what we expected, some that we didn't expect at all. And then we'll do a Would You Rather draft game in the final segment tonight, where Ryan Goodman will be asked, would he rather draft Derrick Henry or Jeremiah Love, Jackson Dart or Dak Prescott, Mark Andrews or Dallas Goedert? Those are just a few of the names we'll be getting to later on this evening before we bid you adieu at 9 p.m. Eastern. So let's kick things off tonight. And I was faced with this decision in one of my slow drafts already, and I'll tell you how I did it after we talk about it. But basically, here's where we're at right now. The Brown County, Wisconsin District Attorney's Office, quote, is not yet prepared to make a formal charging of Josh Jacobs in relation to this domestic abuse arrest that he had. The standard for, and I mentioned this on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour last night, the standard for probable cause, the standard for arresting somebody in this case is probable cause. However, the DA has a much higher standard that they adhere to in regards to that. So that's why I think, at least in part, why we haven't seen any charges come through yet. Now, this doesn't mean there won't be charges. I'm sure there's going to be at some point. Josh Jacobs' lawyers are pretty vehemently defending him that he's innocent and they don't believe charges are going to come up. Ryan, holy cow, this has a million ways it could go. It could have him released by the Packers. It could have him on the commissioner's exempt list. He could be suspended this year. He could be suspended next year. He could not be suspended at all. If we go to Fantasy Mojo, and I would encourage everybody, if you have or if you're playing on FFPC, get a membership to fantasymojo.com. Truly a great resource for ADP, stack finding, waiver wire stuff during the season as well. Darren Armani is the godfather of the Pros versus Joes contest that FFPC and him put on. You can connect with them on X at Fantasy Mojo, fantasymojo.com. But anytime I cite ADP on this show, it's all due to him. And I can tell you, Ryan, over the last 5 days in the big gorilla competition, he's running back 15, which means he slipped a little bit. On average, going at the 305, but I think the biggest thing here is how far has he slipped? He's gone as late, and this is about 24 drafts worth. He's gone as late as the 502. So I'll get your thoughts right now on what we should be doing with Josh Jacobs for those of us who are playing in slow drafts, especially on FFPC, and get your take on what you would be doing if the third round rolls back to you, or maybe even the fourth round rolls back to you. Josh Jacobs is sitting there, man. How do you handle this?
Yeah, obviously a very bad situation for Jacobs. And I just want to take a moment. I know it's tough to, we always just jump to the fantasy implications of this, but obviously something really bad happened and that sucks. So I hope the person that was affected is okay physically and mentally. But yeah, in terms of the fantasy implications of it, I mean, it's really tough right now how to call it just because of how much is unknown. I would say I definitely would take his value down somewhat. I wouldn't, have it go down 3 whole rounds, but like you said, if he's at the 502, you simply can't pass up a guy like Jacobs who has just such a secure role in his offense. I mean, the Packers have no one behind him. I mean, Marshawn Lloyd is there, but he's dealt with injuries the past, his first 2 years in the NFL. Emmanuel Wilson's gone. He's in Seattle. I'm sure they would love to have him back just because of this whole situation. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we don't know the outcome. He could legitimately be cut because of, I feel like this is one of those situations where it's like teetering on the edge of if some kind of video comes out or some other evidence, he's done. He is completely done. And that is the risk here. With that said, we don't really have that yet. So, with, like I said, how secure his role is in his offense and, just how good of a fantasy player he's been for the past 4 years, I still wouldn't take his value down that far. But I still think it definitely has an impact. I think this should probably legitimately affect some of his, some of his playing time this year, with obviously the risk that it takes, cuts through the whole season. So I'm not feeling great about the situation. I don't know about you, Eric.
So here's the situation I was in yesterday, and Tom Smith. I'm going to put Tom's comment up here in a second, but okay. So I'm in this best ball with the KFFSC where I play most of my leagues because obviously I can't play FFPC. But I was faced with this decision at the 311 and then the 402. And for me, I just felt like that. Yeah, that's a discount from where he'd been going. For me, it wasn't enough with, how nebulous this was and the unknown. And I felt at that point, the risk was outweighing the reward. But I did say, and I was doing another radio spot this afternoon, I said in this slow draft, if he comes back to me at 511, I'm probably taking him there at that point. And then as Tom pointed out, who's in this draft with me, Josh Jacobs went at the 509, 2 picks before I could take him. So that's where he fell there, which is, again, it's best ball. It's a little bit different, but still 509 is fairly late. And I think that's the best. I mean, I think Justin Herzig was saying if it's a round of ADP, he'd probably be jumping on him there. And then I think it was Bob Harris from Football Guys who was talking about maybe it wasn't Bob, but somebody had dropped him. And I was reading, God, I can't remember who it was. I was reading somebody talk about it today. And it was 2 rounds maybe isn't even enough, right? Where he's got to be going like right around like running back 25 or running back 30 before they consider it. And that just kind of goes with the whole how wide the spectrum is on this right now because of what can happen. And I don't want to take a 0 in round 3. I don't want to take a 0 in round 4. But then I look at it at that 5-6 turn, and if I can put Josh Jacobs on this team as my number 3 running back, well, and nothing happens, well, then all of a sudden this team is looking really, really good. But you got to be able to take that risk, and that's not something I'm willing to do at this point. I would be willing to take the risk in the early to mid 5th round, but 3rd or 4th, I think I'm still staying away.
I think I agree there. I think 5th is the earliest I would take him. I mean, if we're talking about, so I'm looking at the ADPs right now, and like guys that are going around there, like Bashal Tutin, I would not draft Bashal Tutin over. I just can't bring myself to do that, drafting him over Josh Jacobs, even with the risk baked in. In terms of guys like Montgomery, I would still probably take him over. It's just, it sucks right now. Just postpone your drafts until we get a little bit more information. But I don't know. I think mid 5th is probably like a fair value for him right now.
What's funny, Ryan, is the running back that I ended up settling on because Jacobs didn't make it to me.
Was it Tutin?
It was Tutin. That's who I ended up going. Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever. I mean, and by the way, I don't necessarily loving that situation right now for taking Tutin that high, but I think the draft kind of dictated that I would do that there. And I don't have much of Tutin this year, so what the heck, right? We don't draft in fear. Let's move on. Speaking of fear, or not at all, let's talk about Devon Achane, who is in the news for not the greatest of reasons, but I'm not certainly not smashing a panic button right now. Alanis Thames reported that Devon Achane is hoping to be ready to return to full action by the start of training camp. We knew that he missed some of the stuff in OTAs this past week, but we didn't know why. Then we found out the reason was that it was a cleanup procedure that he had done on his shoulder earlier in the offseason. He has been practicing, but it's been limited practices. And he said he's already regained the strength in his shoulder, which is good. I would imagine after the Dolphins give him a 4-year, $68 million extension, they're probably being cautious with this. They don't want to be messing around with recovering from a shoulder surgery when you are as small as Achane is, and he's sort of like the focal point of that offense, right? Like he's going to be driving that Dolphins train this year, and you want to handle him with kid gloves as much as possible. Now, I talked about this last night. Very interested to hear your take on this. Running back 7 for Devon Achane right now at the 202. He is going ahead of Chase Brown, Amarian Hampton, Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Walker. What do those 4 running backs have in common? They are all in significantly better offenses than Miami. How do you balance taking maybe the best talent among them, the best pure talent as far as age is concerned right now in Achane? How do you consider taking that guy over 4 other guys who maybe aren't as purely talented as him, maybe not as young as him, maybe not as much tread on the tire, maybe a lot more tread on the tires they have than Achane does, but in significantly better offenses? Because Ryan, when it comes down to it and you're picking at the 202 and the big gorilla in the FFPC for $1 million, are you willing to stake that team on Achane over those other 4 guys when you know those teams are going to score more points than Miami?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, honestly. But I just think, Miami's obviously kind of in a rebuilding phase right now with letting Tua go. They let Waddle go. And that's also a big, another flag to kind of draft Achane, I think, because a lot of big targets for Waddle. I know he was injured a lot of last year, but Achane just, when they've given him that contract, basically is like, we are going to make you the focal point of this offense. We know you're this talented. We're giving you the money to bat. We're putting our money where our mouth is. And I think I would take him, even though some of these other teams might score more points. I think Barkley is the only question there. I don't think I would take Hampton over him. I mean, I know he had a lot of injuries last year, flashed a lot as a rookie, but I don't know. I just think it's a little too risky there, but I still love Achane as a talent. I think this Miami offense is not going to be as, anemic as people think. Malik Willis was very good. I know it's a completely different team, but he really shined in his limited opportunities for the Packers. And of course, Jeff Hafley is, the former Packers coach, is now the Dolphins head coach. But I think Achane is going to have plenty of opportunity to, both for catching the ball out of the backfield and for scoring touchdowns. I honestly would stake, a pick on him at that 1-2 turn. I think is that what you said he was going about?
202, yeah.
202, yeah. I think Barkley is the only real where I'm, he obviously had that otherworldly season 2 years ago, and they're trying to get back to that, and they need to definitely lean more on the O-line and some of the play action stuff that was really successful back in Philly 2 years ago. But yeah, I don't know. I think just because of how much volume Achane is going to get with Waddle going, they don't really have any legitimate receiving threats. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of dump offs to Achane, so he's just going to soak up targets. He's going to get a lot of the carries there, and he's just an insane talent. So I think he's worth it at that point. But yeah, I'm curious to see how you view it.
Well, here's the thing. I have Achane on a couple of dynasties. Okay. I might have him on one redraft team so far, but I've been kind of deathly afraid of drafting him there, and I've skipped over him a couple of times. And my Wednesday night high stakes fantasy football hour co-host Farrell Elliott always tells me, and I'll do this in the Southern drawl as best I can, Balky, we don't draft in fear. And so that's what I think I've been doing with Achane, is I've been drafting in fear. And I always bring up the Ben Gretsch quote that, again, I don't know if he said it. I think he said it. We need to stop asking ourselves what happens if this guy gets hurt and start asking ourselves what happens if this guy doesn't get hurt. And if Achane does stay healthy this year, we're probably looking at minimum 70 catches this year, probably in the 80s. I would imagine you're probably talking about over 1,000 yards rushing, maybe another 500 receiving, and double-digit touchdowns, right? If he stays healthy, even if the Dolphins are bad, I mean, they are still put up, at least they're not going to get shut out every game. They are going to score points.
They're not the Raiders last year. Sorry, I know the Raiders are your team, but
okay, but use that as an example, right? Because the Raiders were terrible last year, and Ashton Genty, who granted was, I don't know, I think he's probably going a little bit later than last year than what Achane was now, but that dude missed 1,000 rushing yards by 25. I mean, he had double-digit touchdowns, right? He had 40 some catches, or it wasn't a bad season for Genty at all. And I think we come out of last season thinking it was bad because of our expectations on ADP, right? So I was talking about this with Saquon Barkley. Barkley's season last year wasn't all that bad, but when you consider where we were drafting him as a fantasy industry as the third pick overall, then we're disappointed with that. But we made those expectations. We have nobody to blame but ourselves on that. So I think Achane too is another guy, especially when you're talking about winning an FFPC main event for $1 million, winning an FFPC Big Gorilla for $1 million, and beating out thousands of other teams. I think utilizing that early second round pick on Achane, I mean, if he goes off and if he stays healthy, this is what dreams are made of. This is how you win 7 figures, is believing in a player like that and having him come through.
Yeah, and I just want to point out one thing. I think Achane legitimately has, and this is up for debate, but in my opinion, I believe he legitimately has number 1 running back upside, even in that offense, just based on volume. I don't know, CMC last year. Okay, I know this is maybe a bad comparison, but he's CMC and he was in a way better offense, but he just had so much volume. He wasn't an efficient player. He just had endless volume and he stayed healthy. And if Achane can do that with his talent, he can easily be top 3 running back this year. But obviously the injury risks are there. I can't see Hampton having that. Hampton does not have that upside. Obviously Saquon has been that player, so he does, but I also I don't think it's there with Chase Brown in terms of
the problem with it is the supporting cast, right? It's okay, maybe you could make the case that Brown or Hampton are going to have better seasons, or Walker are going to have better seasons than Achane, but who has the highest upside? If I'm going to tell you that one of those guys finish top 3 among running backs this year, you're probably going to think it was Achane. Like, he just has that high ceiling. He has that ability to go otherworldly, go nuclear.
Right.
The only other, well, I shouldn't say that. So the way that the running backs are going right now, Gibbs, Robinson, McCaffrey, obviously, and then we see JT in the middle. Cook and Genty. Cook, I don't talk about enough. Cook is another guy that I think is very interesting this year. Yep. And then it's Achane after that. So, but I think you could easily say that Achane has just as high a ceiling outside of Gibbs and Robinson. He has just as high a ceiling as any other running back that we're drafting this year.
Agreed.
For sure. Moving to northern Florida, let's go to Jacksonville and talk about a wide receiver named Parker Washington. And this, according to the Jaguars official website, Grant Udinsky, who is the OC calling plays for Jacksonville this year, says Washington is, quote, capable of what he did at the end of last season last year, and even more than that. 32 catches in the month of December, 19 catches for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns over the course of the last 3 games of the regular season. That was tops among the Jaguars in that span. That was more than Brian Thomas, obviously. That was more than Strange. That was more than Etienne. That was more than Jacoby Myers, Travis Hunter, everybody. John Shipley, who covers the Jaguars for SI, said that Parker Washington was arguably the best player on the field today. Small sample size. I think you could give that moniker to a lot of different players over the course of OTAs, training camp, and just practices in general. But when the OC says something like this, we take notice. Now, I know some high-stakes players that have been on Parker Washington all the way back since January in FFPC drafts. They were looking at this guy taking a big leap forward, that it was not a fluke, that this guy is going to be a player this year, and he's going to help a lot of teams win. I have since had some conversations with some other high-stakes players who believe that, and by the way, his ADP right now is 705 in the FFPC Big Gorilla wide receiver 34. Some other high-stakes players, Ryan, have told me that they believe when we get to Las Vegas at Planet Hollywood and at the FFPC live events and people are drafting out there, they're of the opinion that he could be a 4th-round pick, shooting up 3 rounds. And granted, it's only May and we're what, 3.5 months away. That's a pretty big leap to make up. But at the same time, we saw what Trevor Lawrence said about him last year. We saw what Washington did on the field. Shipley is talking about the Jaguars potentially giving him an extension, right? So there is some upside here. But forget about the 4th round thing. I'm already looking at the 7th round where he's wide receiver 34. Yeah, maybe I can get on board with that. But we're pushing it right now. We are really pushing Parker Washington up to the level of comfortability where I don't know if I want to take him. You get into the Alec Pierce range, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Jamison Williams, Christian Watson. I mean, these are the players they'll have to leap over to get to the 4th round. So at the 705 right now, yeah, I can still get on board. But more than that, I don't know. I feel like you're really turning my screws to try to get me on board to overdraft Parker Washington. Unless I'm wrong. How do you feel about him?
No, it's funny. I feel like every offseason there's just one guy that he just gets so much hype, just so much hype. It's early, it's still May, but like that seems to be Parker Washington, where his hype is just getting out of hand. I mean, it's like I said, it's May, and this guy's already being talked about like a 4th-round pick. That is just frankly absurd. Like I'm not buying that whatsoever. I think definitely. Just Ryan, I like his ADP right now.
I'll just say this right now. If he were to go up to a 4th-round pick, this is Egbuka, Garrett Wilson, Ladd McConkey, T. Higgins. One of these things is not like the other, like the old Sesame Street thing, and that'd be Parker Washington. Of course, you and I can look back on this in December and say we're talking about Washington. That remains, again, we're talking about range of outcomes here. Anything
yeah.
But I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. You said you're down with his ADP right now at 705.
I am down, and I was looking at it, and it's right next to Brian Thomas Jr. And I just want to say, like, Jacoby Myers is a little bit behind them at wide receiver 42, it looks like, but you can actually make a legitimate case that any of these guys are going to score the most fantasy points as the main receiver for the Jags this season. It's very hard to tell like who it's going to be. Obviously, Thomas has the most talent. Parker Washington seems to be the most trusted, and Myers is like, I mean, Washington's like the kind of trusted slot guy. Myers is kind of like the possession receiver, I guess. And is also a very trusted target, but there's a legitimate case for all of them. I honestly, I don't buy into the fourth. If he gets up to the fourth round, don't draft. I mean, the risk reward is just not. It's just completely out of hand.
Unless there's unless there's some sort of injury or something, right?
Oh, of course. If there's
if they're all healthy,
both Thomas and Myers, tear their ACLs, sure, draft him in even the third round. I don't know. Like, there's literally no one else there to throw to, and then also Bashal Tootin, he would be a good pick too. But no, that's obviously not happening. I do like that ADP. If he falls to the 8th round, I'm fully on board with taking him. I was actually looking into him from last year, and he was a top 15 wide receiver the second half of the year. So very reliable for a large stretch of the season. So it wasn't just a flash in the pan, right? Like, it wasn't just like kind of like I guess like RJ Harvey's a guy that, like, I think it was like the RB5 from like weeks 13 through 17 or whatever. Parker Washington from like weeks 9 on was a top 15 wide receiver. So he's proven it on the field. It's good. It's great to see that he's still, kind of doing it in the offseason and impressing the coaching staff. I trust Liam Cohen. I think he's obviously like done very well in Tampa Bay, and the second half of the year, the Bucks or the Jags offense was just one of the best in the NFL, heavily utilizing Washington. So I like that ADP, and I would even maybe draft him like wide receiver 32 potentially. I'm trying to see like who's going around there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so for Washington, I think I'd still rather have Alec Pierce over him, who's going right ahead of Washington. But then I think you can make a pretty strong case that he's a better choice than Jordan Tyson, who's going above him. I definitely know there's plenty of high stakes players that won't touch Marvin Harrison that would rather take Parker Washington.
I would definitely draft him, over Tyson.
Washington, I could see Washington over Tate. I think, what's interesting is if you move Washington up to that 5-6 turn, which is about a round and a half higher than where he's going right now, there's a glut right there that I think is fascinating, where it's Rome Odunze, Jamison Williams, Christian Watson, and then if we put Parker Washington in there, I think those are all semi-polarizing players at that 5-6 turn. I'd be on board with any one of those four at that spot. And then above that, we get Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans, where I think I'd rather have those guys. But that we're already talking about a round and a half. We can easily move him up right now. How far beyond that he goes, we'll just keep drafting and see throughout the summer. We're going to stick in Florida. This is kind of weird. We went from Miami to Jacksonville. Now we're over to Tampa. Okay. Todd Bowles, the head coach for the Buccaneers, said, Bucky Irving is coming along fine. We all wipe the sweat off our brow. Great. And then it's the Matthew McConaughey meme from True Detective or whatever, where he's smoking the cigarette and his eyes are bugging out of his head, because then Todd Bowles said, is expected back sometime in summer or fall. Fall, for God's sake. Just so everybody's aware. The first day of winter is December 21st. Okay. That means December 20th is technically still fall. That's most of the season. So again, I think we're picking at nits here. At least I am, and I'm probably making more out of this than it is. But I don't know. I don't know how you could be coming along fine from this shoulder surgery and then be maybe out till fall. It's just crazy that this guy could be missing training camp, missing part of the season. I don't know. Tampa is left with Kenneth Gainwell and Sean Tucker in the backfield. I've had some people telling me just stay away from Bucky Irving, draft Gainwell, draft Tucker, and we'll see what Tampa does. I think the other thing too is if Tampa loses Irving and they know they're going to be missing him for a good chunk of the season, they're going to be in the James Conner, Najee Harris, Kareem Hunt, business, Alvin Kamara potentially, or what have you. So I'm in a slow draft right now, and I could tell you, Ryan, that I passed on Bucky Irving. We are now in looking up the draft board right here. We are now in the 6-11. Is that accurate? Yeah, we're at the 6-11.
Wow.
Oh, no, Bucky Irving he got taken. Okay, so he got taken this round. I passed on him. He went at the 6-05. His ADP in the FFPC Big Gorilla over the last 5 days, which is, roughly 24 drafts or so that we're looking at, Bucky Irving is sitting at running back 21 at the 408, ahead of Trevion Henderson and David Montgomery, Jadarian Price, DeAndre Swift, those guys. So knowing that you can get him at a quasi discount right now. Again, that discount is a funny word because this could be a massive overpay when we look back on what happened to him in the season. What's the proper way if you're drafting right now and you're considering Bucky Irving? Is this a player that you want to be in business with in the late fourth? Is the juice worth the squeeze at that point, or are you still staying away and going with some of those other guys I mentioned, Henderson, Montgomery, and the rest?
I am definitely staying away from Bucky Irving. I mean, what is this quote? What is this quote?
Yeah, it's
the
like
summer or the fall. I mean, I understand some NFL coaches just do this shit where they're like, I don't know, at some point, and it's like, dude, just give us a little bit more info, maybe a 2-month window here. Like, what a joke! It's so annoying. But because of that, I think it is concerning. Like. So Bucky Irving, foot and shoulder injury, middle of the season. He was on like long-term IR, came back. He actually played most of the second half of the year. It was like 6 games at the end. It feels like last season was a completely lost season, but he played more than half of the games, which is just shocking to me when I was looking into this. Like I thought he played like 6 games, but no, he played 10 games. And so, yeah, finishing the season having played like 5 games in a row and then being like, yeah, I don't know if he's going to be ready for the season at all. He might come back. Very sketchy. I don't like that. I also, if you're an Irving manager for Dynasty especially, Kenneth Gainwell is a really good player. He led the Steelers in receiving last year. And I know a lot of that is because the Steelers offense was just, it was just the most uninspiring thing I've ever seen. Yeah, it wasn't great. We had Rodgers just checking down to him like every other play. But still, he's obviously a very talented player, and Sean Tucker has more than shown that he's capable of like carrying a fairly significant workload. So we have the Irving injury, the coach quoting saying, I don't know when he's going to be back, basically, and 2 guys waiting in the wings that are pretty talented. I would definitely stay away from Irving, especially that early.
It's tantalizing because he's such a good pass catcher, and his 2024 was so good, and they don't have Rashad White there anymore. So there is a lot of temptation, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know, man. Like Bob Harris always uses and Matt Waldman from Football Guys, they always use the term injury agnostic, and I wish I could draft like that, but I can't. It's still in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
I always bring up this too, Scott White from CBS Sports, who's a baseball guy, but I think this rings true in my mind when I'm drafting too. Your players are going to get hurt throughout the season. It's inevitable. This sport has a 100% injury rate, right? So try not to load up and draft guys that are already hurt at the start of the season. Like and Trevion Henderson is sitting there a few picks after that with all of the explosion that he has, and we saw the big playability. Man, he could be a league winner. I don't know. David Montgomery is a player that is going, granted, a little bit higher than last year, but he doesn't have Jahmyr Gibbs. And we know what a talented pass catcher he can be. And we know that, and I know there's a lot of, it's polarizing talking about the Houston Texans offensive line, but they did make improvements. Yep. How good those improvements will be, we will find out in September. But I think they're significant enough where Montgomery's going to have a good season too as well. So just it all comes back to risk versus reward. I think for me, at that point in the draft, Bucky Irving's risk is not high. It's too high for the potential reward for me. So I'm looking elsewhere as well with you. All right.
I will also just say, like, Gainwell and Sean Tucker are just like, for 0 running back drafters, they're just at the top of the board. They're like, we're going to cash in on this. Irving's going to get hurt or he's going to start hurt. I'm going to draft Kenny Gainwell or Sean Tucker and like the double-digit rounds and just have a starting running back for like a couple weeks. I feel like that is just a big target for people. So, just wanted to call that out.
The other thing too is I don't know, man. Like maybe this makes me sound like a boomer or whatever. I don't think Bucky Irving's the biggest guy in the world, so I get nervous when it comes to these smaller running backs, especially one that's dealing with a shoulder injury that he had to have surgery on, and then subsequently has still not recovered from that surgery. We know he talked about how difficult mentally it is to rehab too. So there's a lot going on there. Okay, we go to Chicago. JT Barrett is the quarterback's coach for Chicago. Wasn't JT Barrett a quarterback for Ohio State back in the day, or am I making things up?
Yeah, no. When I read that, I was like, that's a cool fact. I didn't know he was the quarterback coach for the Bears. He was a Heisman candidate for Ohio State. Yeah, and I don't think he ever played an NFL snap, but he was a very good college quarterback.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever got into an NFL game. And he ended up going to the Saints, the Seahawks, back to the Saints, the Steelers, but I don't think he ever played. Okay. But I guess he's been coaching since 2022 with the Lions, and then last year joined the Bears. So good on you, JT Barrett. Anyway, getting back to it. Chicago Sun-Times had this report that JT Barrett wants to see, quote, fewer crazy plays from Caleb Williams in 2026. Ben Johnson said that was going to be one of the emphases that he would put in putting his stamp on this team and molding Caleb Williams. The interview, Barrett said, we think about, I'm paraphrasing here, but we think about these miracle plays he's made at the ends of games. You think about that, the ending to the Green Bay games this year. These heroic plays. San Francisco one, he kept them in that San Francisco game for quite a while as well. And he's saying if we execute more in the first and second quarter, we don't need these hero plays. So when you look at Williams, he's been pretty bad out of the pocket in his first 2 years in the league. 29th out of 35 qualifying QBs in adjusted yards per attempt on throws outside of the pocket. His accuracy ranked 30th. They're the easy throws, man. Like, how often do we see it when we're watching Caleb Williams, where he'll make a throw that just absolutely stuns you, and then he'll make a throw that absolutely stuns you, like in a different way, right? It's been crazy to watch, and certainly frustrating for Bears fans and frustrating for Caleb Williams owners. The impetus here, if you want to be in business with Caleb Williams, you can, but he's not. I mean, I wouldn't say he's the cheapest guy in the world when it comes to the big gorilla. Quarterback 7 right now. He's going ahead of Herbert. He's going ahead of Lawrence, Jackson Dart, Prescott, Purdy. You can take Caleb Williams, but it's going to cost you a mid-9th round pick to do it. Single quarterback format, obviously, for the big gorilla. There's talk about the Bears potentially regressing because they overachieved last year, which I think is worth talking about. We also have to look at why they perhaps overachieved, and maybe there wasn't a whole lot of overachieving. Maybe this was just kind of who the Bears are. So I think we have to look at that as well. Your thoughts on Caleb Williams as he enters his 3rd season as a Bear?
Yeah, obviously, he has a lot of accuracy issues, as you pointed out. I think for me, it comes back to, if you don't believe in his talent, I don't know what you're doing, because he obviously has all the talent in the world. But the big thing is, yes, hitting on the throws that are there. He makes the insane heroic throws, but he can't hit a freaking normal slant route. Like, just put the ball on your receiver's chest and let him make a play. And that has been his big crux in his like 3 years in the NFL so far, or 2 or 3 years. But he was my main QB that I took last year, and it did work out. I mean, he was QB 7, I think, last year. I guess that's where he's going right now. But the thing is, I don't see him eclipsing that. I think if he does correct some of these big accuracy issues, like taking the easy stuff that's given to him, he can maybe increase on that, but I don't see a lot more upside for Williams. Like, I like the guys you mentioned going in that range. Herbert, I like more than Williams because of Mike McDaniel coming there and kind of reigniting that offense. Hopefully their O-line can stay healthy as well. Trevor Lawrence was the quarterback 2 in this latter half of the year. Like, I'm honestly, I know we just talked about all the Parker Washington stuff. I'm pretty bought in on Lawrence again. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see Caleb finishing as like a top 3 quarterback. And I think where he's going right now, I would not take him as the quarterback 7. I will say I do believe in Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson is a phenomenal coach, and I think the Bears are for real. I think they're going to be a perennial 10-11 win team, maybe even more. I know last year, I think it was a couple more, but perennial playoff team. but I just don't like how high he's going right now. And I'm a little surprised it is that high. Like Drake May, or I guess Drake May and Prescott and Herbert Lawrence. I would draft all of those guys over Caleb Williams, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you feel, but I like the outlook of them a little more than Williams.
I won't have to make the decision, Ryan, for me, because given where Caleb Williams is going, I don't necessarily view him all that much better than some of these other guys that are going 2 rounds later. Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, Prescott's another one, Stafford, Nix, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff. All those guys are going at least 2 rounds and sometimes almost 5 rounds, about 4.5 rounds after him. Wow. So for me, I would rather stockpile tight ends and receivers and running backs there and worry about my quarterbacks later. So unless Caleb Williams falls, probably won't have a whole lot of him this year. And I'm with you. I just don't think, not that I'm a Williams hater as far as what his production is going to be. I just don't think that it's worthwhile and it's the best decision for your fantasy team to take him there when you can wait and take a very similar quarterback in some of those other guys I mentioned too. I mean, I can't even believe we're having the discussion, Caleb Williams versus Patrick Mahomes. And it's a legit discussion for fantasy, but it is still weird to say it out loud for sure. So that's Caleb Williams. We move on from Caleb Williams and go from Chicago for the deep dish pizza to the barbecue in Kansas City. Here's the thing that we got this afternoon. Pro Football Talk reported it. Andy Reid said that the league has not indicated that they are going to suspend Rashee Rice for violating probation. When he was asked about this at OTAs, Reid kind of gave us a word salad, said a lot of stuff without saying a whole lot of stuff. But that was the gist of what he said. Now, currently, Rice is in jail for a 30-day sentence for violating his probation. Andy Reid said the Chiefs talked to the league and said, as far as any further ado to that, there's been no talk about anything further. Don't know when reporters tried to clarify what he was talking about, whether Rice would be suspended. Reid said he didn't know. So obviously there's a non-zero chance of anything. I was listening to Jordan McNamara talk about this on the Dynasty Think Tank podcast, and he was saying if you read the player conduct policy that they have in the NFL, they really can't suspend him for violating his probation. It's not something that is suspendable. Now, obviously the NFL and the NFLPA might have 2 different ways of looking at that, but that's how Jordan, who is a lawyer, looks at it. Now, the concern I have with this is he was smoking weed. Well, that could be a substance problem, a substance abuse policy problem where they perhaps could suspend him on this. And then when you consider that he's rehabbing a knee surgery in jail, which I think is wild that we're talking about this year, but it's 2026. This is the world we live in. So you're looking at Rashee Rice, who certainly was a very desirable player, is a very desirable player when he's not dealing with all these things off field. We have to make a decision on how we're handling him in drafts. Right now in the Big Gorilla, he's wide receiver 10. Brian, he is going at the 303. He's gone as late as the 312, as high as the 107. Mother of God, that is high. But when you look at Rashee Rice here in the early 3rd round, do we want to be in business with him at that price, knowing what we know at this moment?
I think it's fair. I would definitely be cautious with drafting him that high. I think if it got – so I think this news is bigger. It's obviously a lot bigger for Dynasty because the Chiefs have said they're not going to re-sign him. That's obviously not surprising based on how much of a head case he's been in his 2 years in the NFL or whatever. And I would put money on him not being a Chief next year, probably. They're not going to re-sign him. Honestly, if he doesn't clean his shit up, he's on a one-way path to being out of the NFL in like a couple of years. Like he needs to. It's just so aggravating. These guys like getting these opportunities. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna rant about that right now. But
they can't get out of their own way. They can't get out.
I know. They have so much talent. It's like just try a little bit. No, I think if we're looking at just next year and where we should take Rice, the Chiefs need him. They really need him. They do not. Their pass catching group is pretty depleted. They don't have a lot there. I mean, Xavier Worthy's still there, aging Travis Kelce. They need him very badly. So, like, if the NFL does not suspend him, he's going to just step like last year. He came back from the injury, was immediately a top 10 receiver. And I think if Rashee Rice is on the field, as he's proven in his 2 years in the NFL, the Chiefs are going to feature him because they literally need to. And he is the perfect slot guy for their offense that can just eat up yards in the middle of the field. And especially, he's a great red zone weapon too. But I think a little bit later, this, I don't know. I personally would not want to take him in the third round, but if he drops to the fourth, I think I would pull the trigger just because of how much of a necessity is in the Chiefs offense with the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if Rice drops to the fourth, I mean, you can easily tell yourself a story that he's a more valuable player than Teteroa McMillan, more valuable player than Emeka Egbuka, Garrett Wilson, Ladd McConkey. I mean, he is the guy on that offense. Mm-hmm. You do have Travis Kelce, who I know people laugh at me, but you look at his numbers last year, they weren't that bad. We think of him as an aging guy who's been considering retirement. And he doesn't always pass the eye test, but the stats were good, which is what we care about. And then Xavier Worthy, who I think is interesting this year, and I think I'm going to be on him just because of his price and how late he's going, and considering that he just could never get his year on track last year after Travis Kelce wrecked his shoulder in that first game. I mean, that was something he had to deal with the rest of the season. And so I still think this could be a nice little Xavier Worthy bounce back. And everybody's letting him slip right now. Xavier Worthy in the FFPC Big Gorilla is barely a top 50 receiver, and he's going at the end of the 10th round. I think
he's so forgotten. Yeah, yep. I completely agree. I mean, I was so on him last year as the, de facto number one receiver on the Chiefs when Rashee Rice was suspended last year. And then obviously Kelce just barrels into him, completely dislocates his shoulder. He's never right the entire year. That was just so upsetting. But I'm with you. I think he has a lot of value, especially in a Chiefs offense that just needs more pass catchers. And he was really coming on at the end of his rookie year. Obviously, last year didn't work out because of what we just said what happened with Kelce. But yeah, I think he has a lot of value going that way. And I'm surprised he's going that way. I did not realize it was wide receiver 50 around.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. Wide receiver 49 right now for Xavier Worthy. Tom Smith chiming in that he had shoulder surgery this offseason. I guess we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, right? Because we're worried, or at least I'm worried about Bucky Irving and Devon Achane shoulder. And I'm not saying anything about Worthy. The difference there being the positions. Obviously, you're much more concerned about a shoulder with a running back than you are a receiver. And the fact that you are paying much less draft capital with Xavier Worthy than you are with Achane and Bucky Irving. John Harbaugh, the new head coach for the Giants. Let's get into this as we go to the Big Apple, Ryan. He said he's not sure when Malik Neighbors is coming back to the field. Now, this came out last week, but I wanted to bring it up again. Harbaugh said this was not a, quote, simple knee injury. But he's in the slog of his rehab right now. He's in the building every day trying to get back. He had a cleanup procedure on his knee like last month, I think. But apparently that's not, extending his absence at all. That's not going to affect when he's going to come back. Harbaugh said that he wouldn't be on the field until training camp. And he said that a return by training camp, the start of training camp, is still the goal, but they're going to see what happens from here. In other words, we don't know. Joe Shane was talking about this too. He gave a very nebulous answer about when he expects Neighbors to come back. The injury for Neighbors, I think people really started to wake up to it in February or so. Before that, I think a lot of us just assumed that he'd be back, and it's not really as simple for Neighbors, especially when you have to have this secondary cleanup surgery. Malik Neighbors, ADP, has fallen to the 305 right now at wide receiver 12. Again, I'm finding other players I like better here at this point. I like George Pickens better than Neighbors. I like Devonta Smith, quite frankly. I would take him over Malik Neighbors right now, especially if A.J. Brown gets traded. So those are two guys that are going after him in the third round that I think I'd rather be in business with. The upside is crazy, but when you consider that he probably won't be 100% Malik Neighbors all season, even when he does come back. And the fact that we don't know when he's coming back doesn't give me the warm fuzzies about drafting Neighbors this year, Ryan.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think people are forgetting that it's a legitimate chance he starts on the PUP this year, which would mean he misses 4 games. I mean, it's tough because he tore his ACL in week 4. And it's like, I know every ACL is not, they're not treated equal, and he also had some meniscus issues as well, had the cleanup surgery, but this is definitely not like a clean ACL tear. It's definitely concerning. I think that's a little too high to draft him based on the risk that you're getting with Neighbors, especially potentially starting on the PUP. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but the risk is there, and potentially not being right even after that. So it's like, okay, you're getting a fully healthy Neighbors, week 8, 9, potentially. That is not, it's not worth, spending a early third round pick on him, or even late second. So yeah, I think I would definitely be cautious with drafting them there. And I will say Devonta Smith, I agree with you there. If AJ Brown's traded, I know it seems like since the season's ended, that's just like set in stone. He's a Patriot and he's not an Eagle. I guess we'll find out very soon after that June 1st deadline. That's kind of what everyone's thinking here. But yeah, I do like a lot of those guys a little more than Neighbors around that range. Nico Collins, definitely Drake London. Yeah, Pickens probably, Devonta Smith. I think I would still draft Neighbor. I think if we're getting to like the Tet McMillan, Zay Flowers range, I think I would still draft Neighbors above them. But like Olave is a really interesting guy that I would have a hard time choosing between, honestly.
I think McMillan is the line for me as well. I think between Neighbors and McMillan, I think I'm going to go with the upside of Neighbors over those. Yep. And then you're looking at Garrett Wilson, Igbuka, McConkey. You mentioned Zay Flowers. I think Neighbors at this point. I always reserve the right to change my mind. I'm going to draft all summer, so I'm going to change the way I feel about these guys all summer. Now, with the potential of Neighbors missing time means there has to be a beneficiary. Well, maybe in this case, there's 2 beneficiaries, according to Art Stapleton, who writes for North Jersey. He said that Isaiah Likely and Theo Johnson are currently the Giants' 2 top pass catchers. This is, if you're counting them up, this is multiple positive reports we've got on Isaiah Likely over the course of the month of May. Johnson went 45, 528, and 5 touchdowns last year. Very respectable for a sophomore in that offense. And Darius Slayton, by the way, we talked about Malik Neighbors' recovery. Darius Slayton had core muscle surgery, which he's recovering from right now. So when you look at this Giants tight end tandem, no Wan'Dale Robinson, by the way, who's in Tennessee as well. When you look at this Giants tight end tandem, certainly they could start off the season as the top 2 options, but it's hard for me to believe that it's going to stay that way. But that's not going to stop me from drafting Isaiah Likely, whose ADP has moved up significantly over the last 3 weeks, but I still like it. The only way I would not take Isaiah Likely as tight end 10 at the 709 right now, Ryan, is because I would be more comfortable waiting on Travis Kelce or Dalton Kincaid, who I like this year. Jake Ferguson is another tight end that I like better at the ADP. You want to talk straight up? Yeah, it's probably Likely. But when you bring draft capital into this, then I think it's a different conversation. No doubt, though, that I think this is finally the Likely breakout year we've been waiting for. And there's definitely much more than a non-zero chance that this dude finishes as the number 1 pass catcher for the Giants this year, especially considering what Neighbors is going through.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. I think Likely's a guy I've really liked in Baltimore. Obviously, he's behind Andrews and didn't see like the majority of snaps there. Incredibly talented pass catcher. He finally gets his chance to shine in New York with exciting rookie QB Jackson Dart. Obviously, Theo Johnson's still there, but I don't know. I think Likely is definitely the superior pass catcher. No shade to Theo Johnson. But I think Likely seems to be, just given every factor at play, Neighbors injury, young quarterback who needs a reliable target. We have the talent with Likely being a great pass catching weapon at the tight end position, and he's going as like later than the tight end 10. He's just this perfect mix of like situation and upside that I love taking likely in, like the 8th round or so of drafts. I think he has legitimate top 5 tight end upside, especially with the Neighbors injury, and especially with how many targets Wandale's vacated since he was shipped off to Tennessee. So I'm definitely all in on likely this year for sure.
If we go back and look at his Big Gorilla trends, and you can do this on Fantasy Mojo, by the way, when the Big Gorilla launched in February, this was a player that was pretty consistently going in round 11, creeped up maybe to round 10. And then you see the calendar roll over to March. And by mid-March, he's consistently a 9th round pick. Then we get to mid-April, and now he's an 8th round pick. And now we're seeing him kind of all over the place. But what I say his ADP was before, like 709 or something? Yeah, 709. So, yeah. Now he's a 7th round pick. And oh, by the way, the tight end he's directly behind is George Kittle, who is recovering from an Achilles injury. You can easily see people taking likely over Kittle. He can move up even more. Sam Laporta, I continue to talk about, I always say nobody ever says they used to have a bad back. And Sam Laporta is dealing with a bad back right now. Now, the reports that we've got, very minimal, have been positive, but I'm a little bit nervous about that as well. Tucker Kraft coming off the ACL. Kyle Pitts, there's plenty of people who don't believe in him getting it done for a second year. Second year in a row, I should say. So I don't know if he ever gets up to the 5th round, but the path is there for likely to get up to the 6-7 turn. So pack your bags now with Isaiah Likely. That ends our Giants conversation. We're going to come back. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some good news for a running back that kind of let us down a little bit last year, but I think this year is going to be a big one for him. And we got good news from what his head coach said about him, and quite frankly, just how he's treating the running back situation on his team. We are joined tonight on FFPC Insider Access by Ryan Goodman from RotoBaller, RJ the Good Man on X. You can follow him there. We'll step out and take a quick break. When we come back, it is more conversation about running backs as we go. We continue our whip around the NFL. You're watching FFPC Insider Access.
Season. A main event team on FFPC $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
It is time to register for the FFPC main event. Remember, if you are registered by midnight Pacific time this Sunday night, May 31st, you will not only get $200 off your first team, you will also be entered into the Pros versus Joe's drawings, where you can compete against industry pros for 7 free FFPC main event teams in 2027. That is the main event. We have the Big Gorilla going on right now. You don't have to wait to draft for $1 million in the main event. You can draft right now in the Big Gorilla. Drafts going off daily, slow and live, $350 to enter. $1 million grand prize. Don't forget about the 7 Bananas and early Rampage tournament that is going on right now. If best ball is more your thing this type of year, we got that too. The FFPC best ball tournament now awards a $400,000 grand prize, $125 to enter. That's $100K more to grand prize than last year. And speaking of $100K, that's what the runner-up gets. You don't even have to win the thing to win a 6-figure prize. The FFPC Superflex best ball tournament also has a 6-figure grand prize. $100,000, just $35 to enter that. Don't forget about chop leagues. Just don't have the lowest score on any given week in your league, and you will win your chop league with FFPC. We have dynasty startups and empire startups going on as well at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Play fantasy year-round with the home of dynasty fantasy football, myffpc.com. Joined tonight, ladies and gentlemen, on Insider Access by Ryan Goodman from RotoBaller, hanging out, talking fantasy football with you here tonight as we get lubed up for the month of June, which is going to be our next broadcast. We'll be in June. Kind of crazy that we're already here, but it's a lot of fun, and we love talking about it. Hopefully you guys like watching it and listening to it as well. What I want to get into now, Ryan, is the news we got from Clint Kubiak. Now, if we go back to after he took the job, after he beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator, one of the first things he said was the importance of having this 1-2 punch at running back, right? And not putting too much on one guy. And why wouldn't he say that? He just won a Super Bowl with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, right? So it makes perfect sense that we would be a little bit down about Ashton Jeanty. So we carry that throughout the next 3 months or so. And then Clint Kubiak drops this gem on us last week, this according to the Las Vegas Raiders website. Quote, "It's important to have a quality second back, but the best player has got to play, and we've got to get them on the field as much as we can." When you consider that the number 2 running back for the Raiders is probably going to be Mike Washington Jr., the idea of Ashton Jeanty out on the field as much as he can be is not only something that we hope for, might be closer to reality than what we might think. Jeanty, who I said at the top of the show, this is a player that had a good season last year. He didn't pay off on his ADP, but that's on us. That's not on Jeanty. And obviously, when you look at the yardage he had after first contact, it was incredibly high. He didn't have a chance to breathe or fart in that backfield before a defensive lineman was on him, right? And that was a problem with the offensive line. The Raiders obviously went out and paid to get the center from Baltimore, whose name is Lindenberg. Baltimore, they've improved across the offensive line as well. They've made it a point to make sure that Jeanty is going to have bigger spaces, wide open spaces. Shout out to the Chicks on that one. To run wild this year. Running back 6 at the 112, just behind James Cook. He's basically neck and neck with James Cook as that final pick in the first round. I'm wheels up on Ashton Jeanty. I know that he didn't have the season we wanted him to last year, but the fact that what he was able to accomplish in that offense, this is going to be much better this year. And I feel like Ashton Jeanty, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to have no problem paying off 112 ADP.
I'm totally with you. I mean, it sucks that we have to say a rookie who put up 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns was a letdown. Mm-hmm. But we're obviously basing this off ADP, and he was drafted to be a top 5 running back, top 5-6 running back, and he let down. He was RB13. But to do that in that offense is so impressive. And the Raiders, like you said, they on paper. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit. But on paper, they drastically improved the O-line. They didn't really do much with their wide receiver room, but they obviously just had the number 1 overall pick. Fernando Mendoza comes in. We don't know if he's going to start week 1, but either way, him or Kirk Cousins is going to be a better conductor of this offense than Geno Smith was. They bring in Clint Kubiak, who was a Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator. And he's basically just saying that, yes, Ashton Jeanty is incredibly talented and we have to get him the ball. So I'm in on Jeanty at ADP. I don't think I would necessarily draft him higher than that. I think he's very well valued right now. But I'm very high on him this year. Like I definitely think there's top 5 running back upside. Maybe not number 1 overall, just because I do think there is some truth to Clint Kubiak's offense and that he, used Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, a lot, both of them on the field a lot. However, this is not Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. We're talking about Ashton Jeanty and a 4th round rookie. Okay. Right. He is going to be the workhorse on this team. And I'm not worried about that at all. I think he's valued, great right now at kind of the back of the first round, and I'm all in on him being a top 5-6 running back this year.
You don't really. I mean, there's other players that you can be drafting in the first round that I think are fine picks over Genty, as much as we're on Genty this year. I'm fine. Monra St. Brown, yeah, I'd probably take him over Genty. Bowers and tight end premium, yeah, I'd be taking him over Genty. James Cook, back coin flip, but you could sell me on it. JSN, yeah. So I don't think there's much of an opportunity for Genty to move up. And I think the one way he could have is if we got bad news on Daniel Jones. We didn't, and so that kind of keeps Jonathan Taylor above Genty. But to each their own. And I think that if you want to take Genty over any of those guys, go with God. I'm fine with it. I don't think you need to.
What about HN, like we were talking about before?
He's going ahead of HN right now. And I've already done it, Ryan, where I've already taken Genty a couple of times over HN. But if you want to take HN over Genty, I get it. I mean, we talked about the upside. Ryan, who has a better shot at finishing in the top 3 for running backs this year, HN or Genty?
I think HN.
I think HN too. So if you're drafting for upside, then yeah, obviously you would take HN, or we would tell you to take HN over Genty there. Mm-hmm. All right, I want to get into this story. We had talked about on this show over the course of the last couple months. We've hit on this, but there was a story in The Athletic about Dalton Kincaid last week. Kincaid is saying that he's dealing with the knee, obviously right now. He's saying this is probably the best he's ever felt at this point in the year in his professional career. Earlier in the offseason, doctors who looked at his knee, where he has a PCL tear, they told him he should probably try to not have surgery on it, okay? He was told in order to heal it, or in order to make sure it's not a problem, is put a good foundation of strength in that knee to support this torn PCL. And Kincaid talked about how he didn't necessarily prepare his body the way he wanted to handle the wear and tear of the NFL. Not feeling great about the knee, not having total mental confidence in the knee, which we know is a big thing for athletes too. And then you obviously, when you have knee issues, how often do we see those translate into additional hamstring issues, which Kincaid had as well. The way that he's prepared for this upcoming season, Josh Allen has noticed. New head coach Joe Brady has noticed. They praised him for how he's doing. And then Kincaid also talked about, because they did say the earlier report that we got a few weeks back said that they were going to have to load manage Kincaid throughout the season. And Kincaid thinks it's going to be like a wait and see approach. We'll see how much he can handle, or they're going to see how much he can handle. And he's obviously going to do whatever he can to get out there. What's interesting about Kincaid was this is a guy who has really high NFL draft capital. The Bills made a point of making sure they got him early on. And, I know, with apologies to DJ Moore, who was the big addition this offseason, Kincaid's still going to prominently feature into this passing attack for Buffalo. Tight end 12 is where he's at right now. Again, tight end premium leagues, he's going at the 809. That's a price I'm willing to pay. And especially the way I normally treat tight ends, Ryan, I don't know how you do it, but after those top 3 are gone with Loveland and McBride and Bowers, I'm probably waiting till like 10 more guys go, and then I'll start cobbling together a couple of tight ends there in that range. Kincaid's one of my targets this year for sure.
Yeah, I like that. I will say, I feel like Kincaid, it just feels like he's been a sleeper tight end for like 4 years straight. Right. I know he's only been in the NFL for like 4 years, but it just hasn't come together for him. For whatever reason. I mean, I know he's dealt with injury and his role in the offense, and there's been guys getting shuffled around, like Dawson Knox. He's a valuable player, and he's a better blocker than Kincaid. But I just don't, at this point, I feel like he's the guy you always convince yourself that it's his year, but it just never pans out. And I'm not going to say I don't believe in him this year. I think he's, again, fairly valued in kind of like the 8th, 9th round, but I'm going to temper my expectations. Like, I really don't think there's like top 5 upside with Kincaid there, like there is like a Isaiah Likely, as I mentioned before. I would rather have Isaiah Likely on my team than Dalton Kincaid. But overall, very positive news. I'm glad he, feels great. Hopefully he can kind of take that next step this year and, transform into like Josh Allen's number one weapon. I know you mentioned DJ Moore. There's not a lot else there. I mean, based on the current personnel, probably lends me to believe James Cook is going to be another massive workhorse this coming season. But like you said, it's Josh Allen. He needs to. Someone is going to catch passes from him. Kincaid will, but I don't know. His role has kind of been the same ever since he was drafted as a first round tight end. So I'm not too optimistic about Kincaid this year.
Yeah, and I would say prepare for a range of outcomes. It will not surprise me in the least if we see another Kincaid season where he fails to impress and James Cook, Josh Allen, and DJ Moore are the stars. That would not surprise me at all. But when you're talking, I'd have to go back and look. This might be his lowest ADP that we've ever seen in his career.
Yeah.
As far as Kincaid goes, so there's something to be said for that as well. But yes, exercising a little bit of caution, or at least thinking through before you hit that click on Kincaid this year, is probably worth that extra beat spent thinking on it. We move on to Los Angeles, and this is a story about Keenan Allen, but I think it's about much more than Keenan Allen. Joe Hordes, and I believe I'm pronouncing the name right, the GM for the Chargers, was on Kay Adams' show, and he said the door is not closed for Allen to returning to the Chargers. Now, Hordes says they want to let for right now, they want to see what they have with their young talent to get them reps. And, you think about Trey Harris and Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey and all these guys here. That didn't happen last year. Allen gets signed with the Chargers, goes 81 for 777 and 4 touchdowns. Now, the concerning thing for me is this. I have been drafting those 3 Chargers receivers based on, I don't believe Keenan Allen's coming back, right? He doesn't really jibe with Mike McDaniel's offense. They've added David Njoku. They have Amari and Hampton back. They have those 2 all-world tackles in Slater and Alt back, right, too. So you don't have to rely on all these little short pop gun passes to Keenan Allen because you couldn't protect your quarterback last year. We should have extended plays. I've been drafting Trey Harris a lot as a late-round dart throw. I have Quentin Johnston on a few dynasty teams. And say what you will about Johnston, but if you look at the numbers he's put up, it's not been terrible. Now, maybe bust-worthy for a first-round pick, but overall not been terrible. And then you think about Ladd McConkey, who's really flashed quite a bit in that Chargers offense. To me, it just was a natural thing with the new offense to have these young guys grow up together. And then we get this report from Hordes saying that they're not closing the door totally on Keenan Allen. Does that give you pause, Ryan, before you're drafting guys like McConkey, Johnston, Njoku, Trey Harris, Oronde Gadsden? Does that give you a little pause knowing that Allen might maybe make the passing pie a little bit bigger? But it definitely, proportionately, the slices go down for everybody. I'm kind of rethinking what I've thought about this Chargers passing offense all season right now.
I think a little bit. I think the biggest boon is to McConkey's value, right? Like him and Keenan Allen are kind of similar players, just shifty slot guys who are used a lot in the same way. McConkey's kind of like, they're obviously in very different points of their career, but McConkey's kind of like Keenan Allen 2.0 at this point. I think he definitely beats him in the speed department even earlier in Keenan Allen's career. But yeah, I think it does give me a little bit of pause. I mean, if Keenan Allen's on this roster, he's going to play. He's going to command targets. He's 34 years old, okay? But he's a legend. I mean, he's still got some juice left in the tank. So I would definitely lower McConkey's value a tad here. Maybe even like a full round if Keenan Allen's back on the field. I mean, we saw, what happened to McConkey's value, or I guess McConkey's production when Keenan Allen was on the field for this Chargers team. So it definitely gives me some pause. I think in terms of drafting like Gadsden, it doesn't really move the needle for me. I know, we're going to talk about Njoku next, and that's going to be a lot more of a factor there. But yeah, Johnson, just a completely different mold receiver. Like him and Allen couldn't be more different in terms of their makeup as NFL pass catchers. So, I think I'm still kind of taking a late round flyer on Johnston there, just because of what he was able to do. I mean, he's also just another conversation. Johnston has completely changed his outlook in dynasty and redraft. I mean, he was completely like left for dead after that first year when he had a million drops, and it's been impressive what he's able to do, turning it around. But yeah, I would say it gives me a little bit of pause. You
mentioned Keenan Allen's a legend, and I was right. I agree with you. You're right on that. But I was like, how big of a legend? Let's look at this. Keenan Allen right now, among active wide receivers, is number one in career catches. Okay. He's not active, or he's not number one overall with active players. Travis Kelce is ahead of him.
Okay.
But if he has the season, if he and Travis Kelce have the season that they did last year, you should see Travis Kelce move up to 5th all time in catches and Keenan Allen 6th all time in catches, it really boggles my mind considering, the names on this list. It's also crazy too, that if that happens, that means 3 of the top 6 pass catchers of all time will be tight ends, with Tony Gonzalez, Jason Witten, and then Travis Kelce. Crazy stuff. By the way, right now there's 2 Colts in the top 11 with Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. Those guys were teammates for how many years? 7 years, I think they were teammates in Indianapolis. So fun stuff as we go down memory road or memory lane here tonight on Insider Access. Let's keep it in Los Angeles before we move on from there. I want to specifically ask you about this news about Njoku. Chris Ream, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, from ESPN, covers the Chargers as their beat writer there, says it's realistic to envision Njoku carving out a featured role in Mike McDaniel's new offense this past year. Ream points out that when McDaniel was coaching the Dolphins, some guy named Jonnu Smith ended up getting 88 catches for 886 yards and 8 touchdowns. 506 of those yards came after the catch. He's 29 years old. He's out throughout the course of his career. He's always been excellent after the catch. But he is coming off a really bad season as a pro. We talked about, or we heard about in the same article, that Charlie Kolar might be the tight end 1 on this team because he is the most superior blocker of those 3. But I don't think Njoku is that much worse than him. Njoku and Gadsden are sort of like the pass catchers, the wide tight ends or whatever on this offense. But you look at Njoku and this being, realistic to envision him carving out a featured role, to me is pretty crazy, considering FFPC owners have kind of made up their minds about him, Ryan, in the Big Gorilla, tight end 26 in the 14th round. And he didn't move that much further up draft boards when he got signed by the Chargers. So while this report is encouraging, the ADP right now is not. Maybe he's just worth a dart throw in tight end premium leagues at that point. Did I lose you, Ryan? Hold on. No, you're still there.
I got you.
Okay. What do you think about Njoku? Is he just a dart throw in the 14th round, or is he a player that we should be putting more of an emphasis on?
I think he's a dart throw. I mean, I think it's just going to be week to week. We're going to have a decent output from Njoku or Gadsden. It's going to be kind of impossible to know which one. I think Njoku, I mean, Gadsden managers, especially in Dynasty, were thinking they just hit a gold mine last year, but obviously the Njoku signing was very tough to see for Gadsden's value. But yeah, I really feel like it's just going to play out this year. Like, it's going to be a dart throw week to week. Who is gonna like, get the touchdown? Like, it's really just going to be depend on who scores every week. And I would say we're probably going to have at least 1 touchdown to go to split between the 2 of them on a weekly basis. But I don't think either one of them is really going to solidify themselves and carve out enough of a role to be like a relied upon weekly starter in the Chargers offense. I'm sure they will also use both of them too, like in 2 tight end sets, 12 personnel. But again, it's just going to be like tough for each of them to eat on a weekly basis.
Those Chargers outside of Hampton and Herbert, I mean, it's kind of like hashtag better in best ball for all of them. All those receivers, all those tight ends. It's going to be tough to know, who to play every single week. We'll go to New England here. The AFC champion New England Patriots. We had a report from Mike Reese, ESPN.com, said that the players believe that Drake May is taking more of an ownership of this offense. This is his second season with Josh McDaniels as his offensive coordinator. Hunter Henry was interviewed for this. Former quarterback Brian Hoyer, who obviously played for McDaniels for several years, talking about the scheme, how it demands a lot of the quarterback in this offense. The what you're supposed to do apparently comes easy, but learning why you're doing what you're doing, that takes time to sort of assimilate and process and everything like that. The development last spring and last summer was not anything spectacular for Drake May, but the strides he made in season and what he's been able to do this offseason, at least according to Henry and Hoyer, with the Patriots trying to fool him in practice, it's been good for Drake May in OTAs so far. Reggie Gilliam and Romeo Dobbs, who were not on the Patriots last year, also talked about how impressed they were with Drake May and how he's mastering the offense. He was the MVP runner-up last year. He completed 72% of passes. He finished as quarterback 2. So I'm gonna reserve my thoughts on this, and I'll let you speak on it. Right now, Drake May is being drafted as quarterback 4 at the 705. Ryan, how likely is it that Drake May comes close to matches or perhaps even exceeds what he did last year from a fantasy standpoint?
Well, it'd be a lot better if he had A.J. Brown on his team, obviously. So I feel better about that price if Brown is there. Then again, the guy did throw 30 touchdowns, and he was throwing to Mac Hollins, Kayshon Boutte, and Stephon Diggs.
Right.
And Stephon Diggs is a good receiver, but he's not on a team right now. He's obviously not in his prime. So yeah, when I first read this, I was like, did he not already have complete ownership of his offense? He almost won MVP as a quarterback. What are we talking about here? But no, in terms of his value, QB4 is a little high for me. I mean, I feel like in that range, I just like to, take some guys that have some upside and kind of fill out my roster versus drafting a quarterback in the kind of round 6 through 8 or so, 6 through 9. But I do think, he's a very good player, and last year was not a fluke by any means. I know the Patriots have been in the media for a lot of bad reasons in the past few months, and I think that will probably not play a factor in terms of how anything plays out during the season, because it was so, it'll have been so long for parts. But yeah, I think it's still something to monitor. But I guess going back to the value of May, I don't think he's going to finish as a top 5 QB this year. However, if A.J. Brown is there, I think there's obviously a better chance. I still am hesitant to draft him that high, I will say.
I worry about a few things, and maybe some of this is warranted, maybe it's not warranted. There is no guarantee that A.J. Brown is a seamless fit if he goes there. I mean, there's not even a guarantee that he goes there. And I'll be honest with you, I could pretty easily see, and I wonder if this is why Diggs is not signed anywhere yet. If this whole thing with the Patriots it's not going to come to fruition, and maybe I think Schefter was talking about this today, that the Patriots are still not willing to part with a first-round pick in order to get A.J. Brown on this team. And I know Kansas City is interested, and I know Las Vegas is interested. And maybe they'd be willing to part with a first-round pick, and then all of a sudden, A.J. Brown's not going to New England. He's going somewhere else. If that happens, then maybe Stephon Diggs says, you know what, let's run it back, and I'll come back on this team. So maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. But if Brown goes there, there's no guarantee that it's a seamless thing. How often have we seen it where and I know we've seen it work out too, but we've seen plenty of times where these wide receivers go to a new team and have to, catch from a new quarterback, learn from a new OC, play in a different offense, having a different head coach over them. It's not always a thing that works out to the advantage of the receiver and the quarterback and the team, quite frankly, in that situation. I also worry.
I will say Mike Vrabel knows A.J. Brown very well, obviously from his time in Tennessee. So that would be a remarrying. I know they didn't have the same OC. I think Arthur Smith was his OC for at least a year or two. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. He would obviously have some familiarity, at least with the head coach.
And the other thing too that I think is worth talking about is New England goes from a 4th place schedule to a 1st place schedule, which is certainly, I mean, maybe that could be good. Maybe they pass more and they don't run as much. I don't know. And then this is just me looking at other stuff that maybe there's a statistical basis for it or not. But the team that historically has lost the Super Bowl has not done very well the following year. Now that could be good for Drake May if he's forced to pass more. I don't know. But I also, and we talked about this where in the first hour, where I'm not willing to pay up for Caleb Williams at quarterback 7. I don't think I'd be willing to pay up on Drake May at quarterback 4 either. I'll just figure out quarterback later on. So I'm probably going to be off. I don't think I'll have much May this year, even though we could see him. Maybe he takes a step forward and maybe he wins the MVP this year. That's also in the range of outcomes as well. So it's something that we'll be watching. And obviously, by the time this show airs next week, maybe we'll have an answer on the A.J. Brown saga. We can only hope, right? Let's go out to Denver, Ryan. The Denver Post had a story. I think this was Troy Rank, but don't quote me on it. Ben DiNucci, who used to play quarterback as a backup for Denver, believes that Davis Webb, who is the offensive coordinator that's calling plays this year, his offensive scheme is going to be spread and it's going to be up-tempo. And Bo Nix and these receivers are going to, quote, let it rip. DiNucci was on the practice squad to end last season. DiNucci knows Davis Webb as a coach and a friend. And apparently Nix was begging Sean Payton last year to play up-tempo. But Payton limited it to less than 4 up-tempo plays per game. The Broncos tied for 7th in plays per game at 67. And there's I guess Sean Payton is famous for his long play calls, like the verbiage is super long.
Oh, yeah.
Davis Webb's already shortened that up, which would give more of an opportunity for Bo Nix to sort of diagnose the defense, find the weakness, and maybe run more plays. So when you look at this is good news for Bo Nix. Is it necessarily good news for anybody else in this Denver offense? I mean, I guess it's good news for everybody, but is it significantly better news for one of the receivers over the others? The newcomer Jalen Waddle, the old stallion in Cortland Sutton. You have the younger guys in Mims and Franklin and Bryant here. How excited are you about this Denver offense now that we know that at least they're going to start off the season seemingly playing at a faster tempo than they did last year, where they still ran a bunch of plays in the game?
I love it. I mean, I feel like this is a very big year for Bo Nix, where he needs to prove that he's a legit. I feel like he's done really well in his first 2 years, but like this is a year where he has to take a big step, and this potentially new offensive scheme could allow him to do that, especially with the Waddle signing. I think with Jalen Waddle, like this scheme fits perfectly, especially with RJ Harvey. How great of a, I mean, people have their different opinions on RJ Harvey, but I personally think he's a great pass catcher out of the backfield. Definitely better than Dobbins. Maybe not as a actual running back from the tackles, but I think this fits their offense pretty well with the addition of Waddle and getting guys like Bryant and kind of keeping Sutton in that X receiver role, and just kind of seeing what Nix can do. He's obviously proven he's a great improviser, in his 2 years. So I'm all for it. I think Nix has been, at least for fantasy, like very especially last year, very inconsistent. It felt like he was either scoring 12 or like 28 points per game, but I think if we can get a system that fits his skill set better, which it seems like this might, he can be a more consistent producer for fantasy. And I'm really excited about this offense in general with the addition of Waddle. I mean, Waddle is like a couple of years removed from, catching over like 110 passes. He's clearly still got the talent, and I'm sure he's stoked to be in a different environment too. And I'm excited to see what he can produce in this offense.
Nix, I think, makes an excellent backup quarterback for you in the Big Gorilla or the FFPC main event. Quarterback 15 at the 12-11 right now. You could easily pair him with any one of these guys that are going above him. Stafford in the 12th, Nix in the 13th. You could go Mahomes in the 11th, Brock Purdy in the 11th, and then Nix in the 13th. Dak Prescott is a 10th round pick. Jackson Dart is a 10th round pick. And I think you're doing it right when you pair two of those guys up. And I think that's probably going to be the path I take in a lot of my leagues this year, especially best ball, where I'm going to let the elite guys go off the board and hammer this area right here. I think it could be really, really good. The next place I want to go to is Philadelphia. Ryan, the city of brotherly love. The Athletic had a report that Sean Mannion, who's the new offensive coordinator for Green Bay, his offensive scheme is expected to include, quote, more under center plays and under center play action. It's going to have Shanahan McVay influences. Zach Berman, obviously, who wrote this article for The Athletic, backs that up. The Eagles ran 860 plays out of pistol and shotgun last year, and they ran fewer than 270 under center. They averaged, I don't want to get too thick into the numbers here, but Jalen Hurts, if you look back, he has had a different offensive play caller every single year since 2016, which just boggles my mind that he's had a new OC essentially for 11 years straight, including college. Mannion says he wants to blend his preferences with those of whoever is playing quarterback, which would be Jalen Hurts. He says Hurts can do anything we ask of him. Hurts was excited, reportedly, that Sean Mannion was the new guy here. And Mannion says that, Zach Berman, I beg your pardon, says that Hurts's legs will be a part of the offense, but obviously won't be the only part of it. There are a lot of people down on Jalen Hurts. He slipped the quarterback 6 in the Big Gorilla. Do you view him more as that upper echelon elite quarterback tier that he's sort of been a part of the last couple of years, Ryan? Or has he slipped down into that like sort of secondary or tertiary tier that includes but is not limited to, Caleb Williams, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, some of these other guys? Which tier is he closer to right now? Because he's being drafted right in the middle of them.
I think I'm honestly in on a bounce back year for Jalen Hurts. I mean, literally anything new with this offense. That offense last year was a joke. It was like watching paint dry. It was the least inspiring offense, most telegraphed thing I've ever seen in my life. It was so glaringly obvious. I know, exacerbated by Philly fans, obviously, who were calling for Kevin Pachulo's head every week, it seemed. But yeah, just go back to the bread and butter, get under the shotgun, get behind your offensive line, get Saquon going downhill, get the quick hitters for Hurts and get him going in the the RPO and everything. I am back in on Hurts. I think I've always been kind of against drafting Hurts. And I know we've mentioned AJ Brown. He might not be there, so that takes away a factor of the offense. But I believe in Sean Mannion figuring this thing out because they have too much talent on their team to not. I would say I'm not going to reach for Hurts and draft him over some of those guys that you just mentioned, but I think he's a fairly safe play kind of after that next year. So I think he's going to finish in kind of between those two tiers. But I would not say he's going to be a top 3 quarterback. Like I don't know if he has that upside, especially without AJ Brown there, probably heading into next year.
The other thing I want to talk about here as we go back to Miami, Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show last Friday and talked about how Tyreek Hill may not be ready until midway through the 2026 campaign. He had that awful knee injury in week 4 of the 25 season, dislocated knee, torn ACL, torn LCL, tore other ligaments in there as well. The BCL, the XCL, the MCL, the ZCL, the KCL, all of them. That
was one of those injuries where you look away from the TV. It was horrific.
It was super bad. And it was wild that he was like so smiley afterwards. I remember him being carted off and he was just smiling and, slapping palms with his teammates. And like, yeah, good for you, man. I wish I had that attitude. He's 32 years old now. Ryan, he's undergone multiple surgeries for this. In fact, I think he had one in February. I thought it was reported that he might have to have another one yet too, but don't quote me on that. He is this close to being off my board entirely. I really don't want to mess around with him in managed 20-team leagues. I think I can mess around with him as like a 7th receiver or 8th receiver in a best ball league. But he's going before that. So I'm really not comfortable taking him where he's going. In fact, his FFPC Big Gorilla ADP, which is a managed league right now, he's wide receiver 68 at the 1601. I am not seeing a very clean path to fantasy success for Tyreek Hill this season. And you got to wonder from a dynasty standpoint, I don't know what you could get for him, because even if he comes back this year, he won't be himself. And then next year, he'll be 33 years old. And speed was his calling card. You wonder how much speed he's going to lose because of this injury. Just like that with Tyreek Hill, the value has changed so rapidly compared to what it was at this time last year to what it is now. I'm totally off the Tyreek Hill bandwagon. And I guess I'm holding him in Dynasty because I can't get anything for him.
Yeah, no, it's so fair. I mean, this guy's 2 years removed from putting up almost 1,800 yards.
Yeah.
Like, think about how insane that is. And he's maybe out of the NFL now. Also, I don't know if you saw, but apparently he's like trying to be a DJ in Miami now. I don't know how legit that is. It's probably one of those like BS fake accounts that are just saying that.
But it doesn't surprise me.
It would not surprise me based on his past, based on how much of a wild card he seems to be at times. If he's like, screw it, I'm just gonna pull a Kadarius Toney and just like pursue a music career or whatever. Obviously, two very different players.
Darren Waller, his teammate, did it last year.
Darren Waller, yeah, he did. Yeah, but yeah, no, I agree. I don't think Tyreek Hill is going to make much of a dent this year. So I wouldn't. I mean, I guess he's kind of worth a dart throw in like the last round, but unlikely.
Yeah.
He'll produce.
Very unlikely, and it's a shame because if he would have made it through the season healthy, he had another good few years of football left in him. We remain hopeful. We remain to see. Hopefully, he surprises us and comes out and is a difference maker this year. But definitely, the odds are stacked against that. The odds are not stacked against us. Taking our final break, and when we come back, let's talk about OTAs. Let's put Ryan OTC, as Theo Greminger always likes to say, and ask him who he'd rather draft between George Pickens and Devonta Smith, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, so much more. Ryan Goodman from RotoBaller joining me tonight here on FFPC Insider Access. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
Season. A main event team on FFPC $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
And it is time for you to take advantage of that main event early bird with the FFPC by midnight Pacific time on Sunday night, May 31st. If you are registered for the main event by then, you will not only get $200 off your team, you will be entered into the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge drawing, where if selected, you'll be able to compete with 41 other FFPC Joes against 42 industry pros for the rights to 7 free FFPC main event teams in 2027, a $2,200 value on each one. Don't forget about the Big Gorilla drafting for $1 million right now in May. Heck yeah, you can. $350 to enter. Don't forget about the 7 bananas and early rampage promos that we have going on right now. The FFPC best ball and Superflex best ball tournament going off. $400K grand prize for that for the best ball tournament, beg your pardon. That's up $100K from last year. Chop leagues, just don't be the last place scoring team in your league each week or any week, and you will win your Chop League. Dynasty and Empire startups going off as well. If you like playing Dynasty fantasy football, give us a chance at myffpc.com. More than 2,200 Dynasty leagues in our history. Not a single one has ever folded. That's all going on at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Want to bring in Ryan Goodman here for the final segment. Ryan Goodman, who you can check out his work at RotoBaller. You can connect with him on the X at RJ the Good Man. Let's get into some OTA stuff. I was really surprised, Ryan, in a good way, that Daniel Jones was participating in individual drills. Him coming off the torn Achilles from last year. And certainly when you consider how far along he is in his rehab to be working out in individual drills, this bodes well for his availability for week 1 of the season. He's got another 2 months before training camp. And then the start of the season is happening in what, like 3.5 months, somewhere around there. This is really, really good. We don't have to worry about, or at least we shouldn't have to worry about Riley Leonard, Phillip Rivers, or Anthony Richardson playing quarterback for week 1 for the Colts. This should up our faith in players like Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, Alec Pierce, Jonathan Taylor. Certainly it's good for Daniel Jones as well, but a rising tide raises all boats, and Daniel Jones is that ship that's raising all those boats for the Colts at Lucas Oil right now.
Yeah, this is incredible news. I mean, he tore his Achilles in the middle of the season. So, when that happens, you're like, oh, there's no way he's going to be ready for week 1, probably given the timeline, which is usually about a year. I know, going into other sports here, but Jason Tatum came back at a rapid rate from a torn Achilles. So it looks like Daniel Jones is progressing phenomenally. I mean, the Colts had their EPA per play last year it rivaled like Brady Moss era levels of insanity. Right. With JT balling out too. So yeah, if Daniel Jones can captain this offense once again, I think maybe not. I don't think the Colts are going to start off like 7-0 or whatever they were last year, but it's definitely a very good sign in terms of the fantasy outlook for everyone on their team.
The other thing with OTAs and quarterbacks, because I think we got a lot of quarterback news, is the news about Patrick Mahomes. And this is a guy when Tom Brady tore his ACL, you don't doubt that guy, right? And I'm definitely not doubting Patrick Mahomes. He said he's working towards being cleared for full participation at the start of training camp, but he said it's also unclear if that's going to happen. He's having checkpoints every 7 to 10 to 14 days right now. For his knee. It was heavily braced at OTAs when he was working out. He has to be able to cut. He has to be able to prove to the training staff that he can protect himself in that sense. But it seems like it's going very well. And for anybody who was hoping to squeeze out some Justin Fields action in September, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I think as much as it looks like Daniel Jones is going to be under center, Patrick Mahomes probably will be for week 1. And the NFL maybe gave us a glimpse of that because they are in prime time in an island game against the Broncos in week 1 this year. This is good news, not only for Mahomes, but again, the rest of the Chiefs here.
Yeah, incredible. The fact that he can come back, maybe start week 1 after tearing his ACL in week 15 of last year, I think it was. That's awesome. I would have kind of loved to see Justin Fields just get a game or two in Andy Reid's offense. But yeah, obviously great news for Chiefs and everything related to fantasy that has to do with that Chiefs offense, especially Rashee Rice and Worthy, like we mentioned before.
The quarterback news certainly good in Indianapolis. It's good in Kansas City. And quite frankly, I mean, I don't know how, this definitely is not as significant, but the quarterback news was still good in Baltimore as we found out that Lamar Jackson has reported. And, there was some talk about some contract issues there. He talked about how he wants to stay in Baltimore. He wasn't going to talk about the contract. He's going to keep those conversations private. But he wasn't there. He wasn't at the first few practices last week, but he's there now, and this is good. He's 29 years old. I'm in this dynasty startup right now at Superflex, and I just took him at the 111, and I feel pretty good about it. We saw a decline in his rushing yardage last year. He just was not capital letters Lamar Jackson. I think injuries played a much bigger part than that than age, and I think we're in for a big bounce back season with Declan Doyle now calling the shots as the OC there. I'm really excited to see what Lamar Jackson does in 2026, Ryan.
Yeah, agreed, especially since they just drafted 2 pass catchers. So get some help there. I know it was just Zay Flowers for a while. I know Rashad Bateman's there, but they just drafted Elijah Surratt and Jacoby Lane, I believe, in the 3rd and 4th round of the NFL draft. So yeah, great news for Lamar. I think he'll also have a big bounce back year. I know he trailed off a lot after he came back from his injury last year. But he's Lamar Jackson. He's a 2-time MVP. Should have been 3-time. Not to throw shade at Josh Allen, but yeah, incredible player. You know, worth the hefty price and redraft for sure.
The quarterback news continues from OTAs, Ryan, in Carolina. Cameron Wolf, who works for the NFL Network, said that Bryce Young is looking, quote, really good in Dave Canales' scheme, which has apparently evolved. The Panthers have had a great start at OTAs. Young is apparently impressing people there, which is good. He believes that the Panthers, Wolf says this, that the Panthers are capable of winning 10 games this year. They won like 8 last year, I think. If am I right? 8 or 9, something like that.
They went to the playoffs.
Yeah,
they
went
in the first round at home.
They beat the Buccaneers, I think, in week 18. To prevent the Bucs from winning that division a 4th straight year in a row. And they went to the playoffs. So you have Tedero McMillan in his sophomore year. He was Offensive Rookie of the Year. I've talked about the return of Jonathan Brooks on this show, which I'm excited for. I think Chuba Hubbard's in for a nice little bounce back. They still don't have a whole lot outside of that. I think Brazel's probably a year away or two. I don't think Leggett is much. Jalen Coker is somewhat exciting, but he's pretty inconsistent. So for me, yeah, it's cool that Bryce Young is looking good. This guy is still not anywhere close to being a difference maker in best ball or managed leagues for me right now, Ryan.
I'm out on Bryce Young. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I was in on the Panthers last year, and they let me down. I don't think Bryce Young is the future for this team, and I genuinely believe it'll probably be his last year as a starter, honestly. They have some decent weapons. I do like Coker a lot. Obviously, Ted McMillan had a very solid rookie year. Maybe Jonathan Brooks can come back after tearing his ACL back-to-back. They have some exciting pieces of this offense. So I think this has to be the year where Bryce Young takes a big step. If he doesn't, it's over for him, honestly, and he's going to be a backup for the rest of his career.
Yeah, it's tough because you think about, and again, a lot can change over the course of the college football season, but we have all these talented quarterbacks slated to come into the league next year.
Yep.
And if Carolina does take a step back, they're probably going to have a shot at 1 or 2 of them. And then they could start over at the quarterback position if they wanted. Certainly that's probably not the way that they want to do it, given what they gave up for Bryce Young, but you also have to understand it's a sunk cost and you got to make the team better somehow. That may involve a new quarterback next year for Carolina. ESPN had a report that Cam Ward saying he lost 10 pounds this offseason, and apparently it's showing out in OTAs. A lot of the beat reporters have talked about how much more in shape Cam Ward looks this year than last year. Brian Dable is the new offensive coordinator there. He's had a good history of developing young quarterbacks, and certainly this could be the next in a semi-long line of success stories who have worked with Brian Dable. He only rushed for 159 yards over the course of the season last year. I think that number goes up this year. He had 1,000+ yards rushing in college football, which you got to take into account that if he gets sacked, that counts against his rushing yards in college. Mm-hmm. So he had a pretty good career rushing over the course of, Washington State, Miami, the JUCO that he was at, what have you. But this could be a dual threat quarterback that we're looking at with Cam Ward this year. And certainly that helps everybody in Tennessee, and it's going to help the Tennessee offense stay out there more. I remain bullish on Cam Ward this year. I think he is a player that I don't necessarily want to invest in as my backup in a managed league. But if he's my number 2 quarterback, or definitely my number 3 quarterback in a best ball, I think I'm doing things right. And I think Cam Ward has a nice season, especially considering how he ended last year. I think that momentum continues this year, Ryan.
Yeah, completely agree. And I love to hear you say that as a Titans fan. It's been a rough past 3 years for the Tennessee Titans. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a believer in Ward this year as well. I like the upgrades you made as the pass catchers for the Titans, drafting Carnell Tate. While that was maybe a little bit of reach, he was there, and we need high upside talent at the receiver position. Signing Wan'Dale Robinson was big. We still have Calvin Ridley on that offense too. So not horrible pass catching options for Ward, kind of like around league average, maybe a little bit lower, I would say. Hopefully Gunnar Helm can take a step forward this season as well. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I think, this headline, him losing weight, hopefully leads him to, taking more chances with his legs, getting a little bit more nimble in the pocket, scrambling a little bit more, kind of picking up more yards on the ground. You said he did a lot of that in college. So obviously has the athletic ability to go along with that cannon of an arm. So I remain bullish for this Brian Daboll offense as well. I think they have a lot of great players there and can put together a little bit of a surprise year. I know last year a lot of people were kind of bullish. They were like, "Oh, I think Cam Ward's going to be better than some people think," and that did not pan out at all. But I think they now have the coaching and supporting cast to allow him to kind of make that jump.
Part of that supporting cast is Carnell Tate. John Glennon, who covers the Titans for the Nashville Post, said there was nothing but praise for Tate after the first week of OTAs. Now, you would imagine that a player with his athletic ability, with his history and what he was able to do at his position in college, this is the type of thing where he should shine, and he did. But when you consider that Treylon Burks was supposed to do all these things and he didn't, well, there's something to be said that maybe there is something more significant here from a talent perspective with Carnell Tate. Cam Ward talked about how good his hands were, how well he was winning against man coverage, which is also really important. Wan'Dale Robinson had praise for him as well. Let's put his let's put his dynasty capabilities here in the rear view for a second and talk about redraft. Right now, Ryan, Carnell Tate has moved up to wide receiver 30 at the 602. So he has made the top 30 wide receivers by ADP, moving ahead of Parker Washington, Alec Pierce, Jordan Tyson, Marvin Harrison, and now he's knocking on the door of that trio in front of him, Odunze, Whiskey Bill himself, Jameson Williams, and Christian Watson. Is that a spot that you'd want to be drafting him in, or are you willing to take him a little bit even higher, considering he's the mystery door? He's the guy we don't know. He's the guy that could really blow up because we've never seen him on an NFL field before, and we don't know what he's capable of.
Yeah, I think that spot is really fair for him, honestly. Like, I'm looking at the guys you mentioned around him, Mike Evans, Watson, Odunze, Harrison. I would take him over Tyson. I just think with Olave there in the Saints offense, Tate has a little bit more upside as Cam Ward's, supposed number one pass catcher. But I think that's a fair value. I wouldn't say I would reach for him any more than that. Maybe you could take him over Odunze and Watson, but I don't know. With Cam Ward struggles last year. I know he looked better the second half of the year, and the offense should be a lot more improved under Daboll. Tate's still obviously a rookie, and he's never played an NFL down. So I think that's a very fair value for him. And I don't know if I'd be reaching for him more than where he's valued at right now.
I think he's about at his ceiling for me. I probably, if we're in a situation where I need a receiver at that 5-6 turn and Odunze, Williams, and Watson all go off, I'd probably have Tate over a Harrison. I'd probably have him ahead of Tyson. Pierce gets a little bit, I don't know. I think I might take Pierce over Tate there, but it's close. Okay. And it is fun to think about what this guy, what was he, the fourth overall pick in the draft?
Fourth overall pick, yep.
There's some serious draft capital for that, and those guys more often than not pan out. Let's talk about this would you draft segment. We'll go rapid fire on here as we only have a few minutes left in the show. But I want to put you, for the purposes of this game, I'm going to say you only have one fantasy team this year, and you have to make a decision on all these guys based on one fantasy team, Ryan. So you can't say, well, I'm going to have 10 leagues this year. I draft this guy in 5, this guy in 5. You can't do that. You have one league, and these are the decisions you're facing. So would you rather draft Derrick Henry or Jeremiah Love, the grizzled veteran versus the young and up-and-coming rookie?
Let me just, are we talking what scoring? Half PPR, full PPR?
FFPC scoring. So all these will be full PPR.
Okay.
The 2 flexes, if that makes a difference for you, where you can flex out 2 different players. So you could start 4 running backs, you could start 4 receivers, you could start 3 tight ends. And then obviously tight end, when we get to the tight ends here, 1.5 point scoring for them. But this is full PPR for Henry versus Love.
Full PPR, I'm going Love. I think the pass catching upside is legit for him. I know there's still Connor, and they just signed Tyler Algier, excuse me. But I just think that might be poaching a little bit of touchdowns, but I think Love is going to eat up a lot of that work, especially in the receiving game. By the way, I agree with you. I'm going to go with Love, but I'm going to couch that by saying I've never been a Derrick Henry guy. I drafted him like 2 years ago, thinking like, well, I got to get him on my roster one of these years just to say I had him. And now here he is, still going strong 3 years later. Okay, another running back. Would you rather draft DeAndre Swift or Bashal Tutin? I think for upside, I would draft Tutin, but to be safe, I would draft Swift. And who am I? What kind of fantasy player am I? I'm going to go Tutin here. I think, with the vacated role of Travis Etienne, he was a top 10 running back last year. Tutin comes in really flash strong as a rookie, and especially some of the advanced metrics and stuff in terms of like missed tackles, forced, things like that. If he can, kind of corral most of that role that Etienne left with, I think he can be a legitimate running back. He has a lot more upside than Swift. We kind of know what Swift is at this point. Manunga's just going to eat into more of his work. So I think I'm going to take the shot on Tutin here.
I had this decision earlier in that slow draft I was telling you about, and I made the decision. I took Tutin over Swift as well, drafting for upside. Nice. So there's your running backs. Here's a fun wide receiver one. And I'll tell you how I rolled in on this one in my most recent draft too. George Pickens or Devonta Smith?
I think I hate to just caveat this with the A.J. Brown thing, but if A.J. Brown's still there, I'd go Pickens. If he's not, I would go Smith. I know the pass volume is going to be a lot higher in Dallas, but I think, if you look at the numbers with Smith on the field when Brown's not there, he did extremely well and was I think a top 15 receiver most weeks. So I would go Devontae Smith.
I went back and forth on this one. And I'm still, even though I've already made my decision, I'm still going back and forth. I went with Smith. I'm assuming that Brown is gone. So that's why I picked him. Obviously if Brown stays there, then Pickens is the slam dunk play. All right, here's two guys that have been pretty good in their careers in the NFL, but they're both with new teams this year. Mike Evans or Jalen Waddle?
I like Waddle. I love the reports about the offense being more up-tempo. I think, Cortland Sutton's a great player, but Waddle is just a different type of player. I think he fits better with Bo Nix, and I think, he's going to catch 90, 100 passes this year. I really like Waddle. I think, Mike Evans will, I'm sure, have more touchdowns. He'll probably have 9 or 10 touchdowns, but I like Waddle to finish higher this year. I'm pretty bullish on him.
I think I would say Evans, but you make a strong case for Waddle. I know Evans is probably not going to make it through this season unscathed. When he's
especially
out there,
in San Francisco with that
station or whatever. I've heard it. And listen, the first hamstring injury that happens, it's the first thing we'll be talking about. All right, we'll go quick on these last ones. Quarterbacks, Jackson Dart or Dak Prescott?
I like Prescott. Jackson Dart's a little riskier, especially with Neighbor's injury. I don't know how that's going to play out, so I'll go Prescott.
Prescott's cheaper. He's like a round and a half cheaper too, so that's why I go Prescott. Maybe about a round cheaper, not a full round. Jared Goff or Kyler Murray, who's been being hammered in the chat right now by Mr. Bakes-a-lot, has nothing good to say about Kyler Murray, as he calls him. Goff or Murray for you, Ryan?
Goff. He's been a top 10 quarterback in the NFL for in fantasy for 4 years in a row. So I'll take that.
Yeah, draft Goff. I mean, we know he's going to be the quarterback for the Lions. We're not totally convinced. I mean, it probably will be Murray for Minnesota. And you know how good Goff is when he's at home, too, so you know when to start him. Tight ends. Again, tight end premium scoring, Harold Fannin or Kyle Pitts?
I love Fannin. I'm like the biggest Fannin guy out there, so I'm going Fannin. I know the quarterback situation is kind of in flux, but Fannin produced with Shitter, Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel, so enough said. Like, he can do it with Deshaun Watson, honestly.
I worry about the rookie wide receivers that they I shouldn't say I worry about them. The fact that they added them probably is what tips the balance for me in favor of Pitts. I'm going to go Pitts here, especially if Tunga Bailoa is on a mission to get the ball out of his hands very quickly again this year. Pitts should be a big beneficiary of that. Although I do like Fannin. Mark Andrews or Dallas Goedert. We'll wrap it up with the two grizzled tight ends here.
Yeah, can I say neither? I don't know.
I feel like when I've asked people this in the past, that's been the top answer. Yes, neither.
Yeah, I'll go Goddard just because he could be the number 2 pass catcher for Hurts, I guess, if Brown's gone. But I don't know. I don't like either of them. It's a coin flip.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm going to say Andrews here. I think he figures more prominently into the passing game than Dallas Goedert will. And I do worry about Stowers and Lemon coming on in the money weeks at the end of the season where Goddard gets kind of phased out. So it's close, obviously. That's why I asked, but I'm saying Andrews there. Okay, Ryan, we're wrapping things up here. You are a scribe for RotoBaller.com. We can check out all your content there. We can follow you on the X at RJ the Good Man. Is there anything else that you want to promote or want to talk about what you're working on this upcoming football season for RotoBaller?
Yeah, well, I actually just started my own fantasy football podcast called the Quick Twitch Fantasy Minute, out now on Spotify. I just dropped the first episode. Little recap of the 2025 season, their little award show, fantasy trivia in there. So check that out. You can follow us on X at Quick Twitch FF as well. Very new establishment, but trying to get it off the ground here. So I'm excited about it. Any support helps. And yeah, I think it's got a lot of good segments in there, so check it out.
We will. I'm going to subscribe to it after the show for sure. Quick Twitch FF on X, the Quick Twitch Fantasy Podcast. Check that out on Apple Podcasts. RJ the Good Man on X and rotoballer.com. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. As always, enjoy our conversations. Be good. Enjoy drafting season. Most importantly, keep up the great work. We'll do this again very soon.
Appreciate it, Eric. Thanks for having me.
You got it. That's Ryan Goodman, everybody. I want to let everybody know before we sign off tonight, check out the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, $400,000 grand prize, Superflex Best Ball Tournament, $35 to enter. You can still win $100K there. The Big Gorilla is $1 million grand prize. The 7 Bananas and Early Rampage tournaments going on there right now. The Baby Gorilla, $125 to enter, and you can win $100,000 grand prize. We got Dynasty startups, Empire Dynasty startups as well, starting at $100, going all the way up to $5,000. FFPC Chop League starting at $35. Get your chop on with Chop Leagues at the FFPC. And then don't forget, main event early bird. That deadline is approaching midnight Pacific on Sunday night. Save $200 off your first team. Add additional teams for $600 and get entered for free into that Pros versus Joe's drawing. I want to thank Ryan Goodman. I want to let you know we will be back at 7 p.m. next Thursday. May have a bit of a special show. We'll see. No promises on that. I'm going to under promise and over deliver. But I know we'll have a show and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we will see you then. Check out the FFPC family of podcasts. We had this past Wednesday, last night, we had on Greg Wiener, the 3-time FFPC league champion on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Tomorrow night on Extra Reps, we got Dan Flamholtz, the defending champion of the KFFSC main event and a 24-time FFPC league champ. And then next week, on Tuesday at 10 p.m., John Terry, who's won I don't know how many dozens of leagues in the FFPC. It's the June edition of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. And then on Wednesday, we'll have another High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour with you. No Farrell Elliott, but we'll have a good show without him that night. It's going to be a lot of fun. Remember to connect with us on social media, like, share, comment on this video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be tomorrow night, Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time on HSFL or Extra Reps. For Ryan Goodman, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access. We'll talk with you later, everybody.